Hey everybody, this is Robot here from Vespa Motorsport and ScooterWest.com. We're the premier dealership for the Vespa scooter here in San Diego, California. If you watch my prior videos, you can see I have a garage full of both scooters and motorcycles. I've been just a two-wheeler head for a long time. I've had several different types of bikes, mostly off-road and adventure bikes. And of course with the scooters, I've had everything from very old vintage Vespas up to the modern Vespas and modern Piaggio scooters that are typically larger in displacement. I've had 50cc scooters. So you probably stumbled across this video and you're trying to make a decision, what do you want? And I'm gonna quickly summarize kind of the basic differences between a motorcycle and a scooter. And you have some motorcycle heads that are just like, I don't know, they ride a motorcycle because they want to be macho or something, I don't know. You know, I have like a whole different like logic behind how I ride things. I think of everything I ride as like a tool, and there's like better tools for different types of uses. Would you ride a scooter off-road? Well, I would, but a dirt bike's probably better, as most people would think. Would you go cross-country on a scooter? Well, oh yeah, I would, but guess what? A full-size Harley might take the interstates much better. But, you know, they all have different balances of what they do better. But they all cross over in different realms. And a lot of it is kind of based on your riding experience, and also two wheels are very passionate. You know, people are passionate about the brands they ride. There's people that only like Harley Davidsons. There's people that love Hondas. And of course, Vespas. You know, that's what my YouTube channel is mostly about, is the parts, accessories, repairs, and the reviews of Vespa scooters. But maybe you're looking to get your first two-wheeler. I want to kind of cover some of the basics about the crossover between scooters and motorcycles and the benefits. Maybe you have a garage full of wonderful motorcycles, you know, just sport bikes, classic Ducatis, whatever. You're looking for something that's just better around town. Well, guess what? The number one thing that a scooter can do best is like navigate urban and even suburban settings better than most motorcycles. So maybe that's what you realize you're going to do most of the time. You're going to commute to work, go down the street, go to the coffee store. Maybe you want to hang out with other like-minded people that have Vespas. Maybe you like classic, neoclassic, I'll say. This isn't really a classic Triumph, but neoclassic bikes. Maybe that's the reason you take the road to a certain type of motorcycle versus a Vespa. So I'm going to go into some of the technical differences between a scooter overall. I'm talking anything from a 50cc small scooter, it weighs like 125 pounds, up to maybe even crossing into the maxi scooters, which are still scooters. Typically they have over 350cc engines, all the way up to about 650. They're capable of cruising the interstates. And I'll go into motorcycles a little bit in general. Of course, with the motorcycles, there's a very wide gamut or genre of motorcycles, whether it's classic used bikes or cruisers, standards, naked bikes, adventure bikes, neoclassic bikes such as this Triumph Thruxton 900. I think it's the 2012 model year. Electric motorcycles, electric scooters too as well nowadays. But the most convenient thing about a scooter is it's going to navigate urban settings much easier. So where you're doing tight turns, going in between traffic, such as in California, you can typically lane split, or most of the rest of the world, you're going to find a scooter is much more maneuverable. The reason being is the gyroscopic mass of a smaller tire. You can easily switch directions much quicker. There's a little bit more to it than just the wheel and tire size. The downside to having a smaller tire, of course, is it's going to be a little bit of a rougher ride on rough roads. You hit a pothole, it's going to take a little bit more correction, but Vespas are pretty remarkably strong scooters. I've hit some pretty crazy potholes as well. As for another major difference between a modern scooter and nearly all motorcycles, or most motorcycles, is nearly all modern scooters usually use a CVT, or constant velocity transmission, which is typically a belt drive transmission that's fully automatic. So when the scooter is idling, it's essentially in neutral, very easy to use. And typically if you rent a bicycle, you can easily transition to a scooter. If you've never driven any sort of manual transmission, it may be a giant stepping stone to get into a shifting motorcycle, or even a vintage shifting Vespa, which in many ways is harder to ride than a modern shifting motorcycle, in my opinion. The scooters, typically they're always step through. Makes it obviously much more convenient. Lighter weight, typically for similar displacement. The weight is carried much lower on nearly all scooters. Say would compare maybe this GTS 300 to, I don't know, a KTM Duke, or a Rebel 300 or whatever, Rebel 500. Pretty similar acceleration off the line. The Duke's actually much faster if you shift it through the gears, but just having the weight that's just down low makes it much easier. I can drop this scooter so much further, while it's stationary, and easily pick that back up. If I did that on my adventure bike, that's very top heavy and tall and a little bit intimidating to most people. If I had it that far over, I would probably be jumping off it to try to either save it or jumping away from the motorcycle. So it's easier to recover, maneuver them around when they're stationary or at very low speeds. So that's a definite advantage of a scooter. And of course, in the tighter urban areas, that's a major advantage. Most scooters always have storage underneath the seats, the vast majority of them. So you can look underneath the seat, there's a good generous lockable storage that's built into them. There are some motorcycles that have built-in storage that are like mid-size motorcycles that are similar size to a scooter this size. Seat height, it's quite a mixed bag. I don't know, I would say they're about 30 inches. The Thruxton 900 actually probably is a lower seat height. I can ride stuff pretty tall, where I'm on my tippy toes, but I'm pretty experienced, and that's not an important thing that I'm waddling around on my feet. But the ergonomics are always a little different. One thing about a motorcycle, you're gonna get more heat on your legs, so you typically always want to dress up. I always recommend safety gear no matter what, but I'm quite guilty of riding a scooter around, just going around town in shorts and all that. But I don't know, do people ride bicycles in full leathers? Maybe if you're downhill racing a bicycle, you do something like that, but you can get pretty damaged on bicycles, and you're typically not wearing much when riding a bicycle. But a motorcycle, typically, it's definitely a good idea to at minimum wear something like Levi's, and they're not going to protect you if you go down, but just keeping the grit that gets picked up by the road and the engine heat, off your legs. Obviously not a step-through design. Got to throw your leg over it, so maybe you're not the most flexible. That might be something that hinders you. And of course, this Thruxton 900 isn't going to be the fastest motorcycle, but it certainly will out-accelerate probably any scooter out there, including a Bergman 650 or the BMW scooter. That's pretty quick in acceleration. So why would I choose a motorcycle over a scooter? Well, typically if I'm going on a longer ride, I typically like to ride a motorcycle. They're just a little more comfortable. They typically, not all of them, they typically have suspension systems that are much better than even an improved suspension that you put on a scooter. You can upgrade a scooter with the best suspension components, but you still have the limitations of the fork design, the geometry of the scooter, the extreme amount of unsprung weight, which is the engine that's mounted to the rear shock absorber. Typically, sometimes scooters are smoother engines than very smooth touring bikes, because they isolate the engine. Well, that does hinder some of the high-speed handling, having that motor more rubber mounted and disconnected from the frame. Motorcycles, you can find ones that are much more purpose-built. For example, an off-road or a dirt bike. There's so many different varieties of dirt bikes. There's trials bikes for going up, the steepest thing. Obviously, your experience comes much more in play when you ride an off-road bike, because you're kind of adding the third dynamic of the dirt and the textures and the traction and all that stuff and sliding around. I will tell you one little tip. If you can learn how to ride a dirt bike with an extreme amount of confidence, you could pretty much ride any two-wheeler. It just teaches you so much. I'm not saying that everybody needs to get out there and learn how to ride a dirt bike. I've just been riding for so long, it's kind of natural to me, but maybe you're getting into two-wheelers as an adult. You're going to get a ton of experience just riding off-road. Obviously not with traffic, and that's a whole nother set of experience that you learn from over time, or even courses that can teach you about that. But motorcycles, you obviously get more variety of engines, much larger engine displacements, but at the expense of weight. They're sometimes not as convenient to use. Trying to wheel this motorcycle around in a tight quarter, it doesn't turn that tight. And this thing turns a lot more than many sport bikes. And cruisers, typically they have a very long wheelbase, so that hinders their maneuverability at low speeds and when you're parking them. So you gotta keep that in mind. So if you're looking to make lots of little stops in town and that's what you're mostly gonna do, the scooter's gonna suit you so much better. Motorcycle, of course, the long haul is always gonna be typically a more comfortable option. But it doesn't stop you from doing long distance on a scooter. And obviously, the decreased maneuverability and extra weight of a motorcycle doesn't stop people from using them in very tight urban settings as well. So my last little blurb about scooters versus motorcycle. Everybody asks a safety question. Well, if safety is your utmost concern, two-wheelers probably aren't for you. There's no way to sugarcoat it. Two-wheelers are inherently more dangerous than other forms of transportation, whether it be in walking, flying, buses, or driving your own private car. But it doesn't mean that one is safer than the other. I do feel like a scooter, if you get in an accident, they are a much safer vehicle to be in an accident, especially in a side swipe. Motorcyclists, unfortunately, if you get sideswiped on a motorcycle, you're going to have some very serious injuries to your legs typically. A scooter, typically you get thrown off of them. They usually have more rounded, smoother surfaces that you're not likely to catch on to if you are in an event where you get a wreck. Other aspects to keep in mind, I kind of use insurance rates. I'm like, scooters always have a pretty low insurance rate, even though I would consider many of the operators to be less experienced than a competent motorcycle rider. But I don't know, the insurance companies, they know it all from the numbers and the statistics. So, scooter, the value obviously being a little bit lower, but I think they're just inherently more safer. People put less miles on them. That's probably also part of it. But just speed, it ends up getting you in trouble. Yeah, you might have the smaller tires that, in some situations could be a little bit limited in traction versus the larger motorcycles. But the bottom line, if it goes faster, typically the insurance premiums just go on up. At one time, I owned a Honda CBR 600RR. I had a four-wheel drive pickup truck. I think I had a Honda Element at the time, and I had a half dozen other two-wheelers in my garage. Well, guess what? Full coverage insurance on that one motorcycle was more than all those put together. It shows in statistics through the insurance. People that bought that bike in my age group, this is 12 or 13, 14 years ago, when I was much younger, they were likely to wreck that bike in the first year of ownership. The vast majority of our customers, most of the time, they're just tip over incidents. Every once in a while, there's front end collisions or rear end collisions, but not too often, considering we sell a couple hundred scooters a year in San Diego. So I'll give motorcycles a couple safety points. They're typically more stable in an extreme braking situation. The braking distance usually is less than a scooter, even with the best brakes and anti-lock braking system. They can keep in control a little bit better. So if you are skidding, I feel like I can recover from a skid or a fishtail or some type of unwanted handling behavior on a motorcycle much easier than on a scooter. And that's just from personal experience. So that could, in theory, keep you a little safer. If you're on the highways, having extra power to power yourself out of a situation may be useful. Sometimes motorcycles do have more visibility. I would call that a wash, because I know this scooter is kind of like the color of pavement, so it's not the most visible scooter. But if you've got a Vespa GTS that's all in red, I would say this Vespa GTS with the top case is more visible to car drivers than this red Triumph motorcycle. So there's a lot of, pluses and minuses. There's just a couple of them I just had examples to give. I'm sure you can find statistics on other benefits. Many of the modern motorcycles have much more advanced traction control systems and anti-lock brakes compared to a scooter. Having a higher end quality suspension that could keep you out of trouble as well. So I hope some of that information I had to share was useful to you. It's all subjective. I asked me just loves motorcycles and hates scooters. They're not gonna have anything good to say about a scooter, but there's so much more to it. I don't know, I could say a lot of stuff that I don't like about motorcycles or scooters, and a bicycle is a better solution. Sometimes just walking is the best. But it's about two-wheelers with a motor. Hope that helps you out make a decision. And if you're a motorcycle head, maybe you should consider adding a scooter to the stable. You'll find that it's pretty convenient just to have, especially if you're in an urban area or coastal area at the beach or something. Easy to park, easy to store some stuff, easy to take two people on it, versus a motorcycle that's much more of a commitment. Thanks again for watching and listening to all my rambling today. This is Robot here from Scooter West and Vespa Motorsport. If you do want to go on down that Vespa rabbit hole and learn more about them, consider subscribing to our channel. And you can watch many of my reviews, mostly about Vespas, see the wide gamut of accessories, which is very surprising to many people that you can get as many accessories for a Vespa. Probably more accessories for the Vespa than you can for a Triumph, Thruxton, or Bonneville. Harleys, that's a whole nother realm. Those things are asking to be accessorized. But until next time, this is Robot here, and if you do ride, ride safe and always enjoy riding.